He took his daughters on a weekend camping trip, a quiet escape under the stars in Malibu Creek State Park. By morning, the girls were screaming, covered in blood, and their father was dead beside them. Shot in the head as he slept, without warning. No known enemies. No motive. Just a silent bullet in the night, and a killer lurking in the shadows of California's most unsuspecting paradise. But what if authorities knew the park wasn't safe? And what if this wasn't the first time?
June 22nd, 2018. Malibu Creek State Park. It was supposed to be a peaceful weekend. A father, 2 little girls, and a tent pitched beneath the stars. Campfire smoke drifting lazily through the trees. The soft lull of insects echoing across the canyon. Then, sometime around 4:45 a.m., a single, violent sound split the silence. A gunshot. And just like that, the forest was no longer peaceful. It became a crime scene. Inside that tent lay 35-year-old Tristan Beaudette, a brilliant pharmaceutical scientist, a devoted husband, and a hands-on father. He'd taken his daughters on a short camping trip so his wife could study for a major medical exam. It was meant to be a memory-making getaway. One final outing before the family relocated to Northern California. Instead, it became something else entirely. A waking nightmare. The shot rang out in the stillness before dawn. His daughters, just 2 and 4 years old, were the first to realize something was terribly wrong. In the dark, they cried out for their father. Daddy. He didn't move. Sleeping in a nearby tent, Tristan's brother-in-law awoke to the faint sound of crying. At first, he thought it was a dream. But the cries sharpened, high, frantic, filled with fear. He unzipped his tent and hurried across the camp. What he saw would stay with him forever. Tristan was lying face down. Blood pooled beneath him. His daughters knelt nearby, their pajamas soaked, confused and trembling. He rushed to Tristan's side. Checked for a pulse. Nothing. He was already gone. Tristan had been shot in the head while he slept, right beside his daughters. The bullet killed him instantly. The girls had witnessed it all. In that moment, paradise collapsed. At first, detectives thought it might have been targeted. Maybe a robbery gone wrong. A dispute. But there was no sign of theft. No confrontation. No evidence that Tristan had ever known his killer. And soon, a far more terrifying possibility emerged. This wasn't personal. It was random. And it wasn't the first time something like this had happened. For nearly 2 years, campers and hikers in and around Malibu Creek State Park had been reporting something strange. Bullets flying out of nowhere. People driving at night heard sudden loud cracks, their windows exploding without warning. A man walking his dog had been grazed by a bullet. Another was shot through the arm while driving, completely unaware of what had hit him. None of the incidents were linked. Most went unpublicized. The park stayed open. No signs. No press releases. Until now. Tristan's death made it undeniable. Someone had been lurking in those hills, hiding in the brush. Watching. Waiting. And finally, they killed. The community's grief was immediate and furious. This wasn't some reckless camper. This was a father, murdered beside his children, in a public campground. He had trusted that the outdoors were safe. He had done everything right. Tristan's wife, Erica, was shattered. One moment, she was reviewing flashcards. The next, her entire world fell apart. Her husband, gone. Their daughters, traumatized. And the worst part? It could have been prevented. In the months that followed, she filed a wrongful death claim. $90 million. Not for money. For accountability. For answers. She accused the state of failing to protect the public. Of knowing there had been previous shootings, and choosing to do nothing. Her daughters would grow up without their father, and they'd carry a trauma deeper than anyone could imagine. Meanwhile, investigators were scrambling. The park had been shut down. Patrols increased. Trails closed. But the damage had already been done. For weeks, the case went cold. Then, something unexpected happened. A string of bizarre burglaries began popping up around the same area. Ranger stations, storage sheds, water district buildings. Someone was breaking in late at night, always leaving behind signs of careful planning. Whoever it was, they weren't stealing cash or electronics. They were taking food, flashlights, batteries. He wasn't just hiding in the hills. He was living there. Security footage soon revealed a thin man, face obscured, rifle on his back. The image was grainy, but clear enough to confirm what authorities feared. This was the same man. A survivalist. A drifter. Someone who didn't just vanish into the woods, he belonged there. They followed tracks. Boot prints in the dirt. Strange makeshift trails winding through steep canyon rock. And in October of 2018, they found him. Anthony Rauda. He was arrested just north of the park, near a hidden encampment. He was carrying a loaded rifle, camping gear, and a handwritten journal. Inside, he'd scribbled about escaping society, about living free in the hills. It was disturbing, disconnected, rambling, but it was enough. Ballistics confirmed that the rifle he carried was the same weapon used to kill Tristan Beaudette. And that was just the beginning. Rauda was soon linked to at least 11 separate shootings. Some resulted in injuries. Others missed. But one had taken a life. He never targeted anyone he knew. He never demanded anything. He simply chose random people, campers, drivers, families, and fired. No warning. No sound. Just sudden, blind terror. Tristan had been his most devastating victim. Prosecutors built their case. Rauda was charged with murder, 10 counts of attempted murder, and several burglaries. But even then, he refused to show up for court. Instead, he stayed in his cell, silent. The courtroom saw everything. Ballistics evidence. Testimonies from other victims. Photos of the crime scene. But what broke through the silence was Erica Wu. She described the last picture Tristan ever took. His 2 daughters smiling outside their tent. She described his love, his laughter, his dedication, his warmth. And then, she described the moment she saw the police at her door. Her voice cracked as she imagined what he must have felt, hearing that shot, knowing his daughters were beside him. She spoke for every parent who has ever tucked their child in at night and believed they were safe. The judge didn't hesitate. Rauda was sentenced to 119 years to life in prison. It was justice. But it wasn't healing. Because no sentence could bring Tristan back. And no verdict could erase what those girls saw in the dark. The questions still linger. Why wasn't the public warned? How many others were almost victims? And what kind of mind chooses strangers in the dark to destroy? He had no fixed address. No electricity. No cell phone. Just a rifle, a tarp, and the trees. Anthony Rauda wasn't just a man hiding from society. He had erased himself from it entirely. For years, he'd roamed the canyons around Malibu like a shadow. Slipping through forgotten trails, sleeping under brush, breaking into utility buildings when he needed to eat. His camouflage wasn't just in the clothes he wore, it was in his complete detachment from the world. But even ghosts leave footprints. Rauda had been on law enforcement's radar long before the shooting at Malibu Creek. He had a criminal record. Prior arrests. Probation violations. He'd served time for assault. He wasn't unknown, he was just underestimated. In 2017, just months before the shootings began, Rauda was arrested for carrying a loaded firearm and resisting officers. At the time, he was homeless. Unstable. He was sentenced to a short prison term and released. And then, the shooting started. For 2 years, reports came in. A man hit while driving. Another grazed in the arm. Campers jolted awake by strange sounds. But each time, the incidents were treated as isolated. Unconnected. No warning was ever issued to the public. No suspect sketch. No pattern acknowledged. People kept coming to the park. Families. Children. Just like Tristan and his daughters. Looking back now, it feels unthinkable. All the red flags. All the missed chances. Had someone connected the dots earlier, had anyone stopped to ask if these stray bullets were coming from the same place, Tristan might still be alive. But there was something about Rauda that made him easy to dismiss. He wasn't loud. He wasn't charismatic. He didn't threaten anyone directly. He simply disappeared into the brush and reappeared when he chose to. He was the kind of threat people only understand in hindsight. And by then, it was too late. When detectives finally searched Rauda's encampment, they found a crude shelter tucked deep into the hills, hidden behind thickets, invisible from above. There was no electricity. No light. No company. Just books, scraps of stolen food, and the rifle that had ended a man's life. In a battered notebook, Rauda had written about his hatred for the system. About surviving on his own terms. His handwriting was erratic, slanted, feverish. But the message was consistent. He didn't want help. He didn't want contact. He wanted control. Control over when he appeared. Control over who lived, and who didn't. Psychologists who later reviewed the case suggested Rauda exhibited signs of severe paranoia, delusional thinking, and isolation-induced psychosis. But he was never officially evaluated in court. He refused to cooperate. Refused to attend. Refused to speak. Even at his own sentencing, Rauda stayed silent. It was a silence that echoed louder than words. Meanwhile, the emotional wreckage he left behind was impossible to ignore. Tristan Beaudette's daughters survived that night, but trauma doesn't always show itself in visible ways. They were too young to fully understand what happened. But they knew. They had seen the blood. Heard the shot. Called for their father, and gotten no answer. Therapists would later describe their trauma as layered and complex, memories encoded not just in images, but in sensations. Sounds. Smells. A particular texture of night. And their mother, Erica, was left to navigate a path no one should have to walk. Grieving her husband while trying to shield her children from the darkness that had already taken root. She moved forward because she had to. But the pain lingered. There were birthday parties without him. Photos he was missing from. Questions from the girls that couldn't be answered. And all the while, the quiet truth sat heavy in the background. This didn't have to happen. It wasn't just one man who failed them. It was a system. A system that ignored the signs. A system that didn't act until it was too late. In the years since Tristan's murder, Malibu Creek State Park has reopened. The campsites are filled again. The trees sway gently as if nothing ever happened. But for those who remember, the illusion is gone. There's no such thing as a truly safe place. Not when warnings are buried. Not when danger is allowed to walk undisturbed. Rauda is behind bars now, sentenced to spend the rest of his life in prison. But what does justice really mean when the scars run this deep? What happens when you've lost someone who meant everything, because someone else slipped through the cracks? What happens when the world moves on, but you can't? These are the questions Erica is still answering. And the ones her daughters may carry for the rest of their lives. As the case faded from headlines, another set of questions quietly surfaced, ones that authorities have never fully addressed. Were there earlier opportunities to catch him? Why were the previous shooting reports downplayed? Were there more victims, ones who never came forward? And perhaps most chilling of all, what if Rauda hadn't been caught when he was? Would he have returned? Would he have struck again? Or had he already chosen his next target? We may never know.